In today's world, we've been conditioned to believe that being constantly accessible is a strength. We wear our busyness and availability like a badge of honor. We respond to every call, every message, every request, instantly thinking that our willingness to be available proves our loyalty, our importance, or even our love. But let me challenge that belief. Access to your life should be earned, not assumed. Your time, your attention, your energy, these are not infinite resources. They are privileges, not entitlements. And the moment you start treating them like giveaways, people stop treating you like someone of value. Let me be very clear. I'm not telling you to be arrogant or unavailable for the sake of appearing important. I'm telling you that you should understand your worth enough to know that your access should come with responsibility. If people are going to have a seat at your table, they should bring something meaningful to it. Respect, support, purpose, growth. Being available to everyone at all times will eventually drain you and diminish your own sense of value. You cannot pour into others while constantly being emptied by everyone who knocks on your door. We live in a world where boundaries are mistaken for being cold. But boundaries aren't about keeping people out. They're about keeping your value protected. You lock your phone, you lock your car, you lock your house. Not because you hate the world, but because what's inside has value. So why would you treat yourself any differently? People will take as much access as you allow. That's not a statement of judgment, it's a reality. If you make yourself too easy to reach, people won't think twice about taking your time for granted. They'll message you whenever, call you for anything, expect your energy on demand, and slowly but surely, your value begins to drop, not because it's changed, but because you've handed it away too freely. You don't have to be mean. You don't have to be distant. You just have to be intentional. Be intentional about who gets your mornings. Be intentional about who gets your creativity. Be intentional about who gets your vulnerability. That kind of access isn't free. It's earned through consistency, respect, and mutual investment. You'll know when someone respects your value. They won't abuse your time. They won't expect you to drop everything for their chaos. They won't assume they can get to you just because they want to. They'll move with appreciation. They'll approach with humility. They'll honor your time like it's gold because they know it is. So stop apologizing for setting standards. Stop feeling guilty for creating boundaries. Stop letting guilt manipulate you into giving parts of yourself to people who haven't earned it. Your time is not a donation. Your presence is not a product. Your value is not negotiable. You weren't created to be a vending machine of time and attention. You were created to be purposeful, impactful, and intentional. When people understand that access to you is a privilege, not a default setting, that's when they start to rise to the occasion. That's when they start treating you not just as a person, but as a person of value. We live in a world that screams, show up everywhere, be seen all the time, be present in everything. And on the surface, that sounds like solid advice. But if you're not careful, you'll start to believe that visibility is the same thing as value. It's not. In fact, the more accessible and available you make yourself, the more people may start to see you, yes, but they'll see you as common, familiar, ordinary. And let me tell you something very real. Nothing valuable is ever treated like it's ordinary. Think about the rarest things on this planet: gold, diamonds, exotic cars, original art. What do they all have in common? Scarcity. They're not everywhere. You don't walk into any store and just see them lined up on a shelf. Their rarity increases their worth. It's not because they're impossible to find, but because you have to go looking for them. You have to invest something, time, effort, money, to access them. The same is true with people. The ones who always say yes, who are always showing up, always posting, always responding, always reachable, over time they start to blend into the background. You stop appreciating their presence because it's always available. But when someone carries himself with intention and shows up with purpose, not frequently, but meaningfully, people pay attention. Their words carry more weight. Their presence feels more impactful. Why? Because it's rare. You don't need to be everywhere to matter. You just need to matter where you are. You don't have to be loud to be powerful. You just need to show up with presence, with clarity, and with purpose. Your value doesn't increase by doing more or being constantly visible. It increases when people start to realize that they can have you at their convenience. See, abundance without restraint leads to devaluation. Imagine if diamonds were suddenly as easy to find as pebbles. The price would plummet. The world wouldn't look at them the same. That's what happens when you give yourself to everything and everyone. You become familiar, and familiarity breeds complacency. The more people see you doing everything for everyone, the more they assume that's just who you are. And eventually they stop recognizing the weight of what you bring. But when you begin to move with intention, when you become selective with your time and access, you force people to reassess what you're worth. You're no longer just there, you're present with purpose. You're not busy, you're building. You're not constantly visible, you're cultivating something greater behind the scenes. That scarcity, that mystery, that distance, it doesn't make you selfish. It makes you sacred. And you learn to value yourself through intentional distance. People begin to understand that your time is a gift, not a given. Your presence is earned, not expected. That shift changes how people speak to you, how they schedule you, how they treat you. They begin to notice your worth, not because you yelled louder, but because you withdrew long enough to become rare. You don't need to compete for attention. You don't need to perform for validation. Your value has already been set. You just need to stop lowering it through overexposure. You are not common. You are not everywhere. You are not for everyone. And that's exactly why you are valuable. So ask yourself, am I showing up just to be seen? Or am I building value through scarcity, through focus, through intentionality? Because in a world that demands more of you, sometimes the most powerful move is to give less and let your rarity speak louder than your volume ever could. One of the greatest misunderstandings people have in relationships, personal, professional, romantic, or even social, is this idea that being constantly available builds trust and love. But that's only part of the truth. Availability, when overdone, does not build respect. It breeds complacency. And what starts as appreciation slowly becomes expectation. People stop thanking you for showing up because they just assume you always will. Let me be real with you. When you're always there, always picking up the call, always replying instantly, always showing up for others before yourself, people get used to it. They stop seeing it as a sacrifice. It becomes background noise, routine, a silent assumption. And that's dangerous. Not because you aren't valuable, but because your value becomes overlooked. It's not that people are evil or ungrateful by default. It's human nature. We're wired to adapt to what's consistent. That's why when something is always present, we stop noticing it. Think about the sun. It rises every day. Powerful, warm, life-giving. But how often do people actually stop to appreciate it? Rarely. But if the sun didn't rise tomorrow, the entire world would panic. That's what happens when you make yourself too available. You become like that daily sunrise. Beautiful, dependable, crucial, but taken for granted. Because you never gave anyone a reason to notice your absence. And sometimes it's not until you withdraw that people remember what your presence really meant. When you're constantly accessible, you're training people that you require no effort. And unfortunately, the less effort people need to invest in you, the less value they often assign to you. It's backwards, but it's real. People value what they work for. If someone has to earn your time, they will treat it with care. But if you give it freely to everyone all the time with no boundaries, they will treat it like a public resource, available on demand. You see, availability often becomes mistaken for convenience. And once people label you as convenient, they stop approaching you with gratitude and start approaching you with entitlement. They don't ask, can you? They assume you will. They don't consider your bandwidth, your emotional energy, your purpose, because to them, you're just there. And if you're not careful, you become addicted to that role. You start defining your value by how needed you are, not how respected you are. But need is not always love. And being constantly needed will drain you until there's nothing left for your own growth, your own dreams. They're saying this is not about withdrawing love, it's about increasing your standards. It's not about ignoring people, it's about prioritizing your time. It's about recognizing that your availability is not your worth. In fact, sometimes the most valuable people are the ones who aren't always reachable. Not because they don't care, but because they're building something greater behind the scenes. Go back. Not despair, but to redefine the space you hold. Make your presence intentional, not automatic. Let people wonder where you are sometimes. Let them miss your voice, your insight, your energy. Because in that space, they will remember your impact. You teach people how to treat you, not through your words, but through your access. If they never have to wait, never have to ask, never have to wonder, they will stop valuing what you bring. So if you're always available, just remember, the longer you make yourself easy to access, the more you risk becoming easy to forget. There's a quiet trap that many people fall into, and it's one of the most dangerous forms of self-betrayal, people-pleasing. It looks like kindness, it feels like loyalty, and it sounds like humility. But underneath, it's a slow death of your purpose, your power, and your peace. When you live to make everyone else comfortable, you start shrinking the parts of you that were designed to be unapologetically bold. Now, let's be honest. It feels good to be liked. We all want to be appreciated, accepted, seen. But when being liked becomes more important than being true to your calling, you lose yourself in the process. You become a performer in someone else's play, reading lines you've never wrote, acting out scenes that don't reflect your truth. All because you're terrified of disappointing someone. It's the hard truth. You cannot live in your purpose and please everybody at the same time. The two don't walk together because purpose demands direction. Purpose demands intention. And people pleasing, it demands you bend to every wind that blows. It pulls you in 1,000 different directions. Whoever's loudest, whoever's neediest, whoever expects the most, and you end up serving everyone but yourself. But hear me clearly. Choosing your purpose isn't selfish. It's sacred. You are not born to be a filler in everyone else's story. You were born with a specific assignment, a unique vision, a path that only you can walk. Every time you say yes to things that drain you, detour you, or distract you just to keep someone else happy, you're saying no to your own destiny. Now let's talk real life. People will not always understand your boundaries. They'll call you distant, selfish, cold, or different. That's fine. Let them. Because what they're really saying is, I'm no longer able to use your time for my convenience. And that's a good thing. That means you've shifted. That means your life is starting to orbit around purpose, not performance. It doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you start caring with direction. Not every request is your assignment. Not every invitation deserves a yes. Not every emergency is yours to solve. You are not responsible for fixing what other people broke or fulfilling what they refused to carry. You are responsible for protecting the purpose that was placed in you. And that requires discernment. You have to get comfortable with disappointing the wrong people to stay aligned with the right path. The truth is, people-pleasing creates counterfeit relationships. Because when people are drawn to you because you never say no, they're not loving you, they're loving your availability. They're loving your lack of boundaries. And the moment you change, they may disappear. And that's your freedom, not your failure. Living on purpose might cost you approval. It might shrink your circle. It might mean fewer invites, fewer handshakes, fewer people clapping for you. But the peace you'll gain, the clarity, the power, that's priceless. You weren't created to live on everyone's schedule. You were created to live in alignment, to follow a rhythm that's not based on pressure but on vision. So today, give yourself permission to stop performing. Stop trying to keep the peace at the cost of your passion. Stop sacrificing your calling to avoid conflict. Let your yes mean something again. Let your no build boundaries again. You are not here to please people. You are here to fulfill purpose. And the moment you make that shift from being available to everyone to being aligned with something greater, that's the moment your life begins to move with power, direction, and undeniable value. Let's make this clear. Your energy is your power. And just like you wouldn't leave your house keys with a stranger or your bank account wide open, you should never leave your energy unguarded. Because the moment you do, people will spend it like it cost them nothing. And the truth is, most people are not asking for your time, they're asking for your energy, your attention, your effort, your spirit, your peace. The problem is, we live in a culture that glamorizes burnout. We call exhaustion grind. We treat overextension like a virtue. And somewhere along the way, we bought into this toxic idea that if we're not constantly doing, helping, or being available, that we're selfish or lazy. But let me tell you, there is nothing noble about being drained. There is nothing empowering about giving so much of yourself that there's nothing left for your own life, your own dreams, your own mental clarity. Because when you don't respect your own energy, no one else will either. If you keep showing up when you're empty, people will stop asking if you're okay. They'll assume you can carry it all because they always have. They'll lean on you without realizing they're leaning too hard, and you'll keep absorbing it silently until you're mentally, emotionally, and spiritually exhausted. You can't keep operating like that and expect to thrive. Even the strongest engines need to cool down. Even the brightest lights need to recharge. And so do you. You have to be fierce about your peace. You have to set boundaries, not to push people away, but to protect the best parts of you. That means learning to say no, not with guilt, but with clarity. That means not answering every phone call, not attending every event, not responding to every crisis. Not because you don't care, but because you care enough about your energy to use it wisely. The truth is, not everyone deserves access to your energy. Some people are energy drainers, not because they're bad, but because they become dependent on your strength to survive their chaos. And if you're not careful, you spend all your time managing their storms while yours go ignored. You need to know when to pull back. You need to know when to step away. You need to know when to stop pouring into others and start pouring back into yourself. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. You have to learn the art of protecting your space, your schedule, your sanity, and yes, even your silence. Because your energy fuels everything. Your work, your purpose, your creativity, your relationships, your joy. And when it's constantly being drained by unnecessary drama, by toxic obligations, by ungrateful people, you'll find yourself running on fumes, wondering why you're stuck, why you're uninspired, why everything feels heavy. But when you start guarding your energy like a treasure it is, everything changes. Your vision clears, your confidence rises, your days feel lighter, your decisions feel stronger. You stop reacting and you start leading. You stop surviving and you start building. You begin to move not just with hustle, but with wholeness. Well, ask yourself, who or what is draining you? And why are you still giving them access?